Warning: the following video contains explicit language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Hello and welcome to this video. Today we are starting episode 2, part 1 of The Path, a rabbit's story, or rabbit's tale. It's interesting because everything in this is so concentrated. It's real hard to make commentary of any kind of substance because of the chances of spoiling it. It's just hard, and I think we muddled through the first episode pretty well, so let's get into this one.
When we left you last episode, I just discovered what appeared to be an impossibility. Steve Jobs was on the cover of Time magazine. He was alive and celebrating his 66th birthday. My initial thought was that Manera and Brenner had created a stack of fake Time magazines with an aged-up Steve Jobs on the cover. However, they had no way of knowing that I'd choose Time. All they'd asked was that I buy a news magazine. And there was something else. Amy Winehouse was on the cover of Rolling Stone, promoting her brand new 2021 album. I had no idea what the hell was happening. I hurried back to the ATM vestibule, but when I got back there, Brenner and Manera were gone.
Okay, I don't think my first leap would be that they set this up to be fake somehow. I guess my first thing would be, you know what, this is kind of weird. I don't know. To be honest with you, that could have been my first. That might, if something like that happened to me, that might be my first, my first leap of faith or grasping at straws type thing. I don't know. Until you're actually in that kind of situation in real life, I really don't think it's easy to say what you would or wouldn't do.
The world started spinning, my vision tunneled, and I passed out. I woke up alone in the ATM vestibule, and there was no sign of the Time magazine I'd purchased. When I finally felt strong enough to stand, I hurried outside so I could buy another copy of the magazine. But the newsstand where I'd purchased that copy of Time was gone. In its place was the shoe store I remembered. I felt a tingling wave move through my body, and my vision started to tunnel again. I leaned against the closest wall and waited for the feeling to pass. Then I pulled out my phone and called an Uber.
Yeah, I guess dimensional shift like that would probably wear you out. Maybe not physically, but I mean mentally it would probably tire you out really, really fast.
I needed to get home to feel some semblance of reality, my reality. So I went home, took a shower, and then sat down in front of my computer to try and figure out what the hell was going on. From the Public Radio Alliance and Minnow Beats Whale, you're listening to The Path, a rabbit story. I'm Veronica Dale. Stay with us.
Yeah, I think Veronica is acting more closely the way normal people would act, or quasi-normal people would act, in a situation like that, where Carly was, in the first season, I think Carly may have been a little gung-ho, but that's in with her character being desperate to find her friend. So, both Veronica and Carly are well written for the story that they're within. So, it's a good comparison and contrast type thing. I could have probably skipped this part at, or skip the whole music thing, but I didn't.
It turns out nothing was going on, at least nothing I could put my finger on. Both Steve Jobs and Amy Winehouse died in 2011, exactly as I remembered. A quick search online revealed that the current issues of both Time magazine and Rolling Stone featured completely unrelated covers. I must have been hallucinating or dreaming or who knows. But whatever was going on, the world appeared to be back to normal. Or at least whatever normal currently meant to me, which was a place where my would-be soulmate had forgotten I existed and then died thousands of miles away on another continent.
That's kind of dicey, if not suspect, all into itself.
I tried the phone number I'd used to get in touch with Brenner and Manera earlier, but there was no answer. I drove back downtown to see if I could find that newsstand again, but the shoe store was still there. I asked, but apparently the shoe store had been there for decades and had never been spontaneously converted to a newsstand and then back to a shoe store again.
So that could possibly rule out any trickery from the two agents.
I felt ridiculous, but I couldn't think of anything else, so I did my best to wander the streets the way Brenner had done, looking for symbols and numbers and whatever else. Maybe I needed some of that weird amber liquid Brenner had been using to make her symbols in the air, because I found exactly nothing. No matter how hard I tried, how many patterns I repeated, everything remained the same.
She doesn't have that magic touch.
I decided that I needed to find a way to speak with Brenner and Manera, which, as it turned out, was going to be an ordeal. I'll get into that in more detail in a bit. But first, I feel like I should explain a bit more about the circumstances surrounding my boyfriend, his slipping into a strange zombie-like state, eventually forgetting I existed, and then flying to England and dying in a freak car accident. His compact car had been sandwiched between two cars going different directions. The freak part of the accident was the fact that both of the cars were green Volvos.
Yeah, green Volvos. I don't think I've ever seen one. I've seen like dark blue, black, different variants of silver, but I don't think I've ever seen one in like a primary color.
This, in and of itself, wouldn't have been all that remarkable, but these cars were extremely rare. They were both 1975 Volvo 262s, a model that had been manufactured specifically for the US market. The chances of these two cars crashing into each other was so astronomical, it boggled the mind.
Yeah, that's where having a good foundation in probability and statistics would come in. Because I could see somebody who's wealthy, who just wants that particular shade of green, getting it imported, but just the average Joe having one, that is kind of freaky.
Noah and I met on a blind date, fell in love immediately, and became inseparable soon after. It wasn't nearly as super unhealthy as it sounds. We didn't openly declare our love until at least 9 months later. It was just perfect. We did crosswords in bed Sunday mornings, bought groceries at the farmer's market on Thursdays, drank wine.
Yeah, that is that is a very romantic, very idealized picture that she's painting with her words. So yeah, I think things that are that perfect had the potentiality of going to that extreme on the other side.
Danced in the kitchen while we cooked together, and binged every cool TV show in existence whenever we could. We were a team of two, and until Noah started acting strange, there was no question that we were going to be together forever, probably have kids, and grow old in a medium-sized house with personality in a hip yet slowly declining area of the city. London at first, but eventually New York or Austin. We hadn't decided.
I like to shout out to Austin, simply because Austin is Austin is kind of Texas's interpretation of Seattle. So yeah, it's kind of interesting.
But that's not what happened. Instead, Noah became weirdly distant, unfocused, easily distracted. This was completely unlike him. Lucy suggested that he was probably always like this and that I hadn't known him long enough to experience this other side of his personality. But the thing is, I knew him.
And yeah, a lot of times your friends have a really good perspective on things because they're outside of the bubble. But then again, sometimes that bubble can become foggy and they think they see something when they don't.
I did. And Noah wasn't himself. Something had changed, and it began when he started talking to those people he'd found while researching the strange symbols on the front of the flyer he'd been given by a stranger in a pub. I'm not going to go into too many details about the flyer, not because I don't believe you'd find it interesting, but because I don't want anybody else to come looking for this thing.
And that is a great way, when you're dealing with fictional things, that's a good way of putting it out there for the audience without having to spend the time to create a language and build the symbols and all that stuff. It's kind of a cheat because you're just kind of glossing over things, but at the same time, it's a great and convenient way to do it.
The flyer was nothing but a few vague self-help quotations and a handful of weird symbols. Noah dug into every single symbol. He pored over that thing, spent hours and entire days in a number of physical and online libraries, and eventually discovered a phrase in ancient Greek. That led him to a classified ad in an old penny saver from Wisconsin. In that ad was a phone number with the Seattle area code. The number he'd scrawled into his journal under the heading, The Path. When he called, they answered. That was the beginning of the end of everything.
So, from Veronica's perspective, it's kind of, me in that situation, I would be thinking brainwashing, cult indoctrination, things like that.
He was never the same. One day, a month or so after he discovered that phone number, he started acting strange. A couple of weeks later, without warning, he just forgot. I went to meet him for lunch and found him sitting in a booth staring straight ahead. I sat down and asked him if he was okay. He told me he had no idea who I was.
And that, if that doesn't send red flags, I don't think anything will. Regardless, or at least for me, regardless of how my feelings would be towards somebody, that early into a relationship, that I may have just walked away from it. I don't know. That's what I say now. Mind you, I've been married to the same woman for 12 years, been with her for 14 years. So yeah, at this point, in my life, I would probably tear the planet apart looking for. But that, not only looking for the reason why this happened. It would, I would probably tear the planet apart.
Noah's friends were all back in England, and we'd become so intimately entangled in our lives that we didn't really need anybody else. When I told my friends what had happened, they didn't seem surprised. They asked how well did I really know Noah. A few days later, he was back in England.
See, I don't know if that, to me, that kind of comes across as maybe the friends trying to console her. Maybe they're just as, if not more, confused than she is.
Shortly after that, he was gone. And I was left wondering what the hell had just happened. Once again, I tried the phone number with the Seattle area code that had been scrawled in Noah's journal that I'd used to get in touch with Manera and Brenner earlier. This time, somebody answered. They said it was a dry cleaner's. I asked to speak with Manera or Brenner. They said they had no idea who those people were. It looked like I was out of luck. I asked Lucy what she thought I should do next.
Drop it.
You know I can't just drop it.
Nope, I know you absolutely can. People do it all the time. Remember your guitar lessons with Amanda?
Yeah, and to a certain degree, Lucy probably is, of the two on this particular subject, Lucy is probably the more intelligent of the two. But Veronica is kind of thinking with her heart and not her brain.
I had to quit because I kind of had a thing for her.
Yeah, exactly, you quit.
That's not the same.
No, but it's still quitting. And that's just what you're going to do now. You're not quitting.
I really need to find out what the hell happened.
See, I don't think I would quit either, especially with as much time and as much stuff that me and my wife's been through. Like I said earlier in the video, I'd probably tear the planet apart if I could.
Once I know, I'll be able to let go. Forever.
Forever?
Yes.
You know you're going to end up branded in a sex cult.
No, I'm not. Probably not.
Hopefully not.
I'll be careful.
Don't be an asshole. I'm not letting you do this alone.
Thanks, Lucy.
Okay, then. What the hell are we looking for?
See, I think I would be the kind of friend, I'd be a Lucy type friend if I had a friend going through the same or similar something like that. I would be that friend. I would try to discourage them at first. Then once it was evident that they had made their mind up to do it, I would throw in with them and, hell or high water type deal.
I explained everything that had happened. The ATM vestibule, the symbols in the air, the amber liquid, and finally the copy of Time magazine.
Are you sure that the liquid wasn't drugs?
I hadn't thought of that.
Because actually, honey, and I'm not going to disclose how I know this, but honey is a good carrier for psilocybin, THC, and LSD 25. So, you never know. But in the context of this universe, probably not.
Well, it's worth considering. I mean, maybe even before anything else.
I didn't feel drugged. Exactly. But I did feel off somehow.
Well, all I'm saying is that it's worth a think.
Fair enough.
Okay, let's pretend that you actually did find a magazine from the future. What does that mean?
Well, it wasn't from the future. It was dated this month.
Well, Jobs is dead.
Right, but maybe it's like another universe kind of thing.
Ooh, multiverse. Don't you think that sounds a bit like a comic book?
Or an old school science fiction novel, maybe?
I mean, it's science, quantum mechanics, it's possible.
That sort of sounds like rabbits.
What's that?
A book I just started reading. Del Rey published it. There's a podcast.
Yeah, so that's when I heard about rabbits. That's also when I got in touch with the Public Radio Alliance. And, of course, that's why you're listening to my voice right now. After hearing my story, most of which I'd recorded as proof that I wasn't actually losing my mind.
It's kind of cool how they're tying this mini adventure or story into real world things like the Public Radio Alliance, Minnow Beats Well, Terry Miles' real novel Rabbits. It's cool how they just fold all this stuff in together with the universe, the Rabbits universe.
Nick Silver thought it was something they'd like to explore for the Public Radio Alliance. So, let's explore. Lucy explained what she knew about the podcast in the novel called Rabbits. The book was written by Terry Miles. The Rabbits podcast is a documentary on this network, the show feed you're most likely hearing my voice on right now.
It is.
Lucy said that the game allegedly existed in real life, but like Fight Club, you weren't supposed to talk about it.
Yeah, that's a cool pop culture reference. And if you've never read the book, if you've seen the movie Fight Club, it's a good story. But the novel is much better, much more graphic and explicit in some of the more romantic, if that's what you call it. You want to stretch your definition of romantic that thin scenes, but it's still a great novel.
We looked into Rabbits extensively, and although certain aspects of the game seemed similar to what was happening, there were no strange symbols drawn in the air with amber liquid, and there was a kind of leaderboard. It was a game. Whatever this thing was that Noah was into, I didn't think there was any possible way that it was some kind of game.
And that, that's a pretty good way to tie everything in. And we're going to go ahead and call this video good here. We're just about probably about 45 seconds from the midway point of this episode. So we're going to go ahead and call this a video. Let me know in the comments below what you're thinking, how you're thinking, what you think about it. So it's one of those things. Until next time, everybody have fun. Hope your trials and tribulations are to a minimum. Until next time, peace.
Hey, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?